Find better odds on WA racing with Betfair. Punters can access all WA racing codes with a 6% market base rates. Think you have an edge over others? Then jump onto betfair.com.au. Gamble responsibly. If gambling becomes an issue, call 1-800-858-858.
Kogan Mobile. Get started for just $4.90 for 30 days. koganmobile.com.au/AFL.
Dwayne's World with Dwayne Russell.
Hello and welcome to the program. Great to have your company for Dwayne's World for Midday Madness. You call, you get on. That's the Midday Madness promise. So dial the number, anything in the world of sport. It's moving you enough to pick up your phone and dial the number. I'll get you on for the next 2 hours. So 1300 736 736, the open line for Werribee Kia. You can check out their range online. They've got a huge new and used car showroom you can check out online, but you can drop down and see them as well as part of their end of financial year sale. David, Janan, Aid, Jim, they're all down there. So make sure if you're in the market for a new car, you drop in and have a chat to the friendly crew at Werribee Kia. That open line, 1300 736 736. Midday Madness, your calls for the next 2 hours. Andrew Bogut to join us later on in the program as well. The Ben Simmons story has continued to bubble. It caused a little bit of a debate on breakfast today when Andrew Gaze did have a chat to Gary and Tim, and I'll play a little bit of that later on. But Andrew Bogut, one of our greatest of all time, a man who did commit. And he's been a polarising figure, Andrew Bogut, but one thing you can say, he committed to Australia. He played his heart out for Australia. So we'll have a chat to Andrew Bogut about the thought that Ben Simmons won't be playing at the Olympic Games a little bit later on. And I do want to have a chat to you about what I was talking to Gerard Whateley about earlier on. It does have a little bit of a line drawn through Ben Simmons, but also what we're talking about with Jake Stringer maybe getting $500,000 a year, Zach Williams $500,000 a year. Andrew Gaze said today on breakfast that the pay packet is irrelevant, but I reckon it is relevant. When you're paying $50 million in the NBA, it is relevant to what you're getting compared to everybody else in your profession. So I wouldn't mind taking your calls on that. 1300 736 736. Is it relevant? Even though it's the NBA and it's big money, it's $50 million a year. If you're paying Ben Simmons $50 million and you commit an important roster spot to him, and that's $50 you can't pay Damian Lillard to play in that roster spot. And there's an added issue, obviously, in the AFL because the money in the AFL is part of a salary cap. So your thoughts that we do expect, I think, and fairly expect more professionalism, more effort, more commitment, more leadership, because you're earning in comparison to others a lot more than them on your list. There's a commitment of $500,000 in the salary cap to you as a player, sometimes $600,000, sometimes $1 million in the salary cap. You want to get your money's worth, otherwise that part of the cap is wasted. If you're paying Jake Stringer and Zach Williams $500,000 a year, you have to get $500,000 worth of value out of it under the salary cap system. Your thoughts on that? 1300 736 736, because I think what you're being paid does matter. And there is an expectation of professionalism, effort, commitment that comes with it. We'll have a chat about the All-Australian certainties a bit later on in the program as well. I'm looking forward to picking your brain on that, especially Richmond fans, given that there was an All-Australian team named on the AFL website last week. And, you know, it was a pretty good team when you looked at it across the board. But there were no Richmond players in it, which surprised me. But here we go again with the whole Richmond thing. So who should be in it from Richmond? Because I would have thought there were a couple of Richmond players having pretty good seasons as it stands right now, including Shea Bolton, who I was surprised wasn't in that. So your thoughts on that a little bit later on. But your calls first up about what you want to talk about. That's the priority, not what I want to talk about. And I do want to play you a little bit of Sam Edmund firstly on crowds, because we'll follow this story during the course of the next few hours. It's going to be interesting to see what we are allowed crowd-wise at the A-League Grand Final, at the NBL Grand Final Game 3, and at AFL games across the weekend. Here's Sam Edmund with the latest report from Whateley a short time ago.
I join you, Gerard, just off the phone talking to someone now. This is all playing out as we speak. Yeah. So there's a real heightened sense around this. Sometime in the next hour, we're going to get an answer that is so eagerly anticipated for all the reasons you mentioned. So the AFL's in a meeting at the moment with the health department. They're trying to sort out how it looks for our game, but it goes far beyond the AFL. And to be honest, for those of you in your basket, the A-League Grand Final has come along at the perfect time. So last night, my understanding is the Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, recommended 25% across the board, right? that clearly stuffs the A-League and it hurts the NBL Grand Final and Melbourne United. There's a push for a bigger number. There's there's a lot of internal debating going on at the moment at government. So there's a suggestion it could be 50% capped at 25,000 inside one stadium. So the maximum you can have inside one facility is 25,000. Clearly doesn't help the MCG, but it does help the A-League.
Yep.
And it does help the basketball, and it helps other stadiums like Marvel Stadium and down at Geelong and the like. So
Sam Edmund from Waitley a short time ago. Ben in Avondale Heights, Enzo in Echuca. I'm coming to you first, but just to put it into context, here is Gazy on Gary and Tim when they were talking about the pile-on of people criticising Ben Simmons and how hard they've criticised Ben Simmons and whether the wage is irrelevant. Here's Gazy on that.
It's poor, and we talk about player health and player welfare.
Yeah.
This strikes me as one that I have grave concerns because of what he would actually be going through over there in Philadelphia and the scrutiny that he's under unjustifiably.
Some would say to that he's getting paid $40 million a year.
That's irrelevant.
He's
Tim.
expecting.
I hate that argument.
No, I'm just putting it out there. Okay, and we get this off the text machine all the time. Okay, he's getting paid $40 million a year. The expectation is that he will perform at the pointy end of the season.
Of course it is, and he didn't, and I think that he's acknowledged that. But what he's got getting paid, that is what the market says you are worth. That's not his. He's just taking what the market tells him that he's worth, and there are many, many aspects, and you can justify why someone would make that investment in him.
So more money, more scrutiny. Gazy reckons the scrutiny's been way over the top, and that's fair enough. It's a reasonable way of looking at it. But with more money does come more scrutiny, I think. Ben in Avondale Heights. You there, Ben?
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you. Look, I know it's on a much, much smaller scale, but, back when I was playing the game, the AFL in the 90s, I was a bit of a hired gun in the country on a fair chunk of change. And, of course, the expectation was there that you were going to perform. If you didn't perform, there was also the expectation that half your check went over the bar at the club. It's a much smaller scale, but you're getting paid the money. The club's expecting you to get the job done. That's just my
And I agree.
opinion.
And Ben, I agree that there with Gazy and with a lot of people that we have to take mental health into account, and there is a level of scrutiny, a level of abuse that you shouldn't have to cop regardless of the wage you're on. But I'm sure you got a bit more from over the fence than you would normally get if you weren't a hired gun on the big money, Ben.
Well, you did. Granted, this is back in the 90s, so, it was just part of the game. You expected it. You took the money. You copped the abuse. And, not just from your opposition supporters, also from, your own club if you weren't performing to the standards they expected, which, was just part of the deal back then,
Yep, no, I was getting the same at Sebastopol where I underperformed and at Colac where I underperformed as a player coach. So, I know what it's like going back to the country and getting a big wage and not delivering. And there is a high expectation on you to deliver when you pay quite a bit as a captain coach or a hired gun, as you called it, in the country now and in the old days. Enzo in Echuca, welcome to you, Enzo.
Oh, g'day, how you going? Those Philly fans to say Simmons isn't worth the money he's paid and all that, and he's lost in the game in there. The person they wanted to trade him for originally, they wanted to trade him for Harden. And can you tell me what the Nets have done with Harden? He hardly played. He was injured most of the year. He didn't get them past any further than Philly. So who they want to get rid of Simmons for wouldn't have delivered either. And a player's contract is worth more than just what they do in playoffs. If Simmons wasn't at Philly, I doubt they would have even got to the playoffs. And if Joe Imbriel to blame Simmons, say he's done with playing with Simmons, that's just him deflecting from his own poor game. And that bloke, if he's the leader of that team, I'm saying now, I'm going to make the prediction now, if they trade out Simmons, Philly will never, ever win under Joe Imbriel because that bloke, he misses games for headaches, for sore fingers. So he's not a great leader, and that's not what a leader does do. A leader to blame somebody else when they've performed badly themselves isn't a very good leader, People like Jordan would blame somebody for not playing well, but he'd always play well himself, so he had the luxury of doing that. But a leader, I doubt if Jordan played a bad game, he would have blamed somebody else for playing a bad game of losing a game. So goes towards their leadership. He's not a good leader, and when he's their leader, they're going nowhere. He's not a good leader at all. So
Harden was going all right before he got injured, though, wasn't he, Enzo?
He was, but
for the Nets,
but he didn't deliver. At the end of the day, he didn't deliver. I mean, last year Simmons didn't even play in the final playoffs because he was injured, but somehow he still got
injured's
blamed.
a different thing, I suppose. Yeah,
but he still got blamed for them not doing well last year because he got injured.
Yeah, injuries beyond your control, efforts within your control. So, it's been an interesting pile on, Enzo, and it's good to get someone who is watching it as closely as you. Give us a call. I appreciate you giving us a dial in Echuca, and if you ever want to come up to Club Mandalay, a must-play course in Melbourne's north for a round of golf, then we'll give you the voucher and you can go there. Must-play course in Melbourne's north. I appreciate your call for a midweek round for 2 with the Cards. Luke in Preston, you there, Luke?
Yeah, mate. Dwayne, how you going?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, look, so obviously I just wanted to touch on the Ben Simmons situation. I think the big thing for me is just the amount of money that they obviously throw around in the NBA. Now, I completely understand that it's a worldwide sport. The revenue they've got is huge with the marketing, the sponsorships and whatnot. But when you think of the money that gets involved with individuals, and then you put it into perspective, for instance, of AFL players, it's ridiculous. So you look at someone like a Ben Simmons on $40 million compared to, for instance, a Dusty Martin who might be on $1 million. Is he a 40-time better player or more impactful in their industry, in their league, in their game compared to what a Dusty Martin is? I don't think so, and I think that's the biggest problem at the moment with NBA, just the amount of money they're willing to throw around. He deserves to be scrutinised because when you're talking money like that, that's life-changing for so many people and so many, lives can change with that amount of money involved. And to see that you're splashing cash on someone like that can't perform when you need to perform, to me, that's just where the problem lies. He obviously deserves the scrutiny that's going to come his way.
Thanks for your call, Luke. We'll take a few more and then we'll move back to some footy because there is some interesting things evolving in the world of footy with this crowd debate. So we'll bring you that in about 20-25 minutes' time when Sam has an update on that. But Black in Doreen, you got a thought on the Ben Simmons and the bang for buck and the scrutiny that comes with the money you're earning debate?
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. How you going? Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, like any other sportsman, especially that plays in a team sport, he's going to get scrutinised and criticised if they're not performing at the pointy end. And I think Ben would expect even his own supporters to be piling on him. Those guys, as I said, most professional athletes, same like you, Dwayne, when you didn't play a good game at Geelong, you would expect some of your own supporters to say that. I think that the whole disappointing thing with the Ben Simmons thing, and which could have made the situation worse, is when you have a teammate and Joel Embiid comes out and criticises you. I think, that's something we're not really used to as Australian sportsmen, but it is something that's prevalent in the NBA, that blame the other person because, we didn't get the W. And I suppose it's why someone like Steph Curry is so admired by a lot of people, because he puts his hand up when he doesn't perform. He doesn't blame anyone else. He hasn't blamed anyone else for his failings or Golden State's failings in the past, unlike some of the superstars of that sport have. So, as I said, Dwayne, the most disappointing thing is when you have your own teammate who's supposed to be the leader of that franchise has passed the buck and, gets on social media, makes the comments that he made directed at Ben Simmons. I think that's real disappointing. And if you're Ben Simmons, you'd probably be thinking to yourself, do I actually want to play for a teammate like that who's going to throw me under the bus and maybe move on to somewhere else? But the difficulty for Ben becomes that a lot of places that he might want to go, he's going to find the exact same situation with the exact same superstar that, it's all about me and, and if we don't perform, I'm not taking the blame. It's just what American sports, especially the NBA, is about, Dwayne.
Yeah, it's hard to understand it sometimes as an Australian. You're right. We don't quite understand the trash talking and the fact that in some quarters of American sport, it's almost an individual sport. Some of the team sports just masquerades as a team sport, but it's about the individuals as opposed to the complete opposite here. And I think Gazy talked about that with the Australian team putting their arms around Ben Simmons if he commits to the Olympics. It might be a really good environment for Ben Simmons to get in because of that. I think that's the traditional Australian sport environment. It's team first and forget about the individual stuff. Everybody's just all about the team commitment level. And I think, Australia, you could argue, does that better than anybody else. I think we even see it in Davis Cup where you've got guys who are playing an individual sport get together and suddenly think, gee, this team thing's great. I love it. Trent in Brunswick. Welcome to you, Trent.
Oh, g'day, mate. I'm a big Raptors fan, and for the last 3 years, there's been a lot of big talk about shipping Cole Lowry off. And I don't know if you know or not, but Cole Lowry's a Philly native. I think now's the time for Masai Ujiri to make a push and get Ben Simmons into Toronto. Get him out of that hostile territory. Philly fans are brutal, mate. He's got to get out of there. They'll never forgive him for what he's done. And, Toronto, it's a lot like Melbourne. They'll welcome him with open arms, mate. He'll thrive up there.
No, thanks for your call. Philadelphia sports fans, I think they're NFL fans once booed Santa. So that's the kind of fans you've got there. Thanks for your call, Trent. Michael in Carolyn Springs, you there, Michael?
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. Look, at the end of the day, what's happened. Ben Simmons can't undo that, so it's what happens next. And I actually believe that the smart franchises that are on the cusp, or even like someone like the Lakers, they're not going to let a guy like Simmons go slide down the rail, and they'll see him as someone who can take them forward. So I think he'll end up in a really strong franchise somewhere else, and he'll probably be better off.
Gee, Lakers with AD and LeBron and Ben, just going to be a pretty high salary they're going to end up paying, Michael. But you might be right. That could be the environment that he needs to go and play with LeBron. I think LeBron's spoken to him before about playing with him. So maybe they do have some sort of relationship that can be enhanced if he somehow gets to the Lakers. Appreciate your call, Michael. Christian in Geelong, Sam in Lilydale, Michael in Preston. We'll come to you all after the break. 1300 736 736. If you don't give bang for buck, do you expect more scrutiny if you get more money? Your thoughts on that, and we'll give you an update on the crowd situation for the coming weekend of footy, basketball and soccer in Victoria, hopefully in about 10 minutes' time. Stick around, you at Dwayne's World, and it's Midday Madness.
I tell you what, Zach Williams is one of the laziest footballers going around at the moment.
Oh, Brownie, it's big.
It is an absolute indictment. Don't worry, there's about 100 pieces of vision we've left on the cutting room floor. We could have gone through it for the next half an hour and showed it. And we could have really, really hurt his reputation. So I'm just verbaling it for you. That bloke has come to the Carlton Footy Club, paid that sort of money. He needs to turn up in better shape and get himself fit and turn up and put in a better effort, especially on defence.
Jonathan Brown on Fox Footy's On the Couch last night. More money, more scrutiny. That's as hard a scrutiny we've had on any AFL player for quite a while. Jonathan Brown's assessment of Zach Williams, and was watching that and listening to Gazy this morning, and it all started to play out in my mind. So over to you. Your thoughts as we continue with the texts and the calls. The text machine, by the way, keep them coming. 0433 98 11 16 for Temper TEMPUR mattresses and pillows like no other. Quite a few coming through. If I was Simmons, I'd be heading to Golden State. Perfect fit. G'day, Dwayne. You're spot on about American sport and how the members of a team are almost individualistic. We often hear about risks between teammates. It's almost like it's a team within a team. Thanks for your text as well. Dwayne, Joel Embiid lost Philly the game. Turnovers and 3-point misses cost them more than our Ben. More love for Ben. Thanks for that. Cheers, CB. Dwayne, you need to pull people up when they elaborate on what happened between Joel and Ben. Joel was asked what the turning point was, and his explanation was the passage of play, which involved Ben's hesitation. So that is actually correct. So Matt and Forest Range, thanks for bringing that to my attention. and I will give that a run. So what happened was Ben Simmons was passed the ball under the basket at a critical stage late in the last quarter of that game, and he decided not to take the shot because he, in his mind, maybe, and this is the assessment, that he didn't want to be fouled and have to go to the free throw line. So he passed it out to somebody else who ended up going to the free throw line and only made one of the two. And Joel Embiid said that was the turning point when Ben Simmons didn't take that shot for what a lot of people were assessing as a want not to take the shot because he didn't want to get fouled and go to the free throw line where he's had a lot of struggles. Dave in Richmond, you there, Dave?
Hi, Dwayne. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Now, not talking about Ben Simmons. He knows what he's got to do. Back to the AFL crowd thing. Now, I went to the first game of the season when it was 50% capacity, and everyone was spread out across the entire stadium perfectly. Now, what happened in the weeks following was the club, Ticketmaster, and the MCC, whoever, decided, all right, let's not open up as many bays to save some money. So then the actual density across the ground that was available actually became more and more. By the time it got to the Bulldogs and Richmond game, I was in a row which was completely full, and basically my bay was probably about 90% full, which is not really 50%, is it? So unless there's that compliance from all the involved parties, the government has every right to stop this. Now, the AFL needs to be on board with this and say, all right, we're going to allocate every second seat or two and spare two and do it properly. Don't keep trying to fudge it just to save a few dollars here and there.
It does appear that way, Dave, as if they're cramming everybody into one bay, so they only have to have two gate attendants and a couple of cleaners to clean that bay, and they can keep the other bays clean, and they don't have to worry about cleaning them up after. It does appear that way, Dave. That might not be the truth, but to the eye, it is bizarre that if you've got a stadium as big as GMHBA Stadium or a stadium as big as the MCG, that everybody's not spread to the point that you can have, in theory, every second seat filled, but at least in theory, more space between patrons, rather than have them sitting next to each other, breathing, closer to each other for the 3 hours of the game. I appreciate your call, Dave, and we'll watch this space in the next 20-odd minutes. Hopefully Sam Edmund will rejoin us when he gets an answer. Christian in Geelong, you there, Christian?
Yeah, I am, Dwayne. Thanks for taking my call, mate. I just wanted to talk about the Ben Simmons saga. I'm a little bit in the opposite camp to most people. I think while I was on hold here, I was just looking at his stats. He's averaging less points a game than he ever has in his NBA career, averaging less rebounds a game and averaging less assists per game. You could make the point that for a guy that was compared to being the next LeBron James as soon as he was drafted, he hasn't actually developed any part of his offensive game whatsoever. Like, he's an unbelievable defender, and I think he was a first All-NBA team defense, but he generally just has not developed any part of his game offensively. And in today's NBA, it's now a shooter's league. Like, you see how many teams jack up in excess of 43-point shots per game. The only other point I wanted to make is it's all well and good to say, that Philadelphia should trade him, but I'm looking at his contract and I'm not. If I'm another team, I'm not paying him $33 million a year, which he's owed next year, to pick up a guy that can't shoot at all. So
yeah,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's not just your opinion, Christian. That's the opinion of a lot of people coming through on the text. Want to hear from another Ben as well. It's killing me listening to SEN today. So this is from Dan in Mount Martha. Killing me listening to SEN today. So many callers who have no idea what they're talking about. If you don't think Simmons deserves at least 80% of the blame, you didn't watch the series. So there's quite a few that are saying, well, he can't shoot, and he can't shoot well enough. Yeah, he's a great facilitator. He's a great passer, and his assist numbers aren't too bad. But in terms of shooting, and from the free throw line, where you expect your point guards to be able to, nail 75% at least, he has struggled. And that's why the scrutiny has been super, super high. A few more calls. Straight back to your calls and your texts. A couple on the Temper text machine. TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. That number 0433 98 11 16. One here on Jonathan Brown's assessment of Zach Williams. Spot on, JB. As a Carlton fan, we need more football people like Brownlee. Doesn't often point out players, so when he does, there's a very valid point. Pretty sure a Ross Lyon would look him in the eye and telling the same thing. Lotchie in Taylor's Lakes, thanks for that text. Another on the crowd situation. The restriction on crowd limits would be more for the public transport through the city, keeping the number down in case of an outbreak. Kerry in Perth, thanks for that. And there's no doubt that a lot of people do come on the trains as well, but we're hoping for 50%. That's the bottom line today. We haven't had that official yet, but that's what we've got our fingers crossed for. Spot on, Dave. It's exactly what it looks like in regard to cramming the crowd quota into a few sections. It would be good to get clarity on that if it's actual fact. It would be interesting to get clarity on it as to why they cram everybody into one section. And one here from John. Expectations come with big contracts. Simple as that. And had a few come through on that, essentially saying the same thing. And that is the expectation level that comes with higher contracts. Dwayne, all higher paid jobs will come under scrutiny. CEOs, managers, coaches and players, you command the price and you don't deliver, there'll always be commentary on the performance. Mark from Mount Barker, thanks for that. It doesn't matter really what industry you're in. That's why maybe this has hit such a nerve with so many people who are on the line to talk about it. Aussie in Kilo Reese, you there? Aussie, you wanted to talk Carlton and Zach Williams. Hello.
Hey, Dwayne, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I just want to talk about Carlton and the recruitment. For example, Zach Williams. We tend to recruit players with big money that always aren't fit enough at the start of the season. I don't understand. We recruit Andrew Russell, supposed to be the best fitness guy in AFL, and Mitch McGovern, Zach Williams, even Cripps this year. What's going on? Why aren't these players fit enough? You're on big money. And you come to the club to play midfield, and you can't even do that. You go to the halfback flank, and you can't even do that. What's going on at this club? It's a shambles at the moment.
Well, it's hard to know whether they are actually fit enough, but they don't work hard enough, or they're not working hard enough because they're not fit enough. That's one of the things that the review needs to try and work out. That's what Matthew Pavlich and the reviewers are going to be paid their money to do, if you want to draw the line through what we're talking today. So it will be interesting to find out. Well, in saying that, we'll never find out what the answer is because the review will probably be kept quiet. But it would be nice to know if they're fit enough but they're not working hard enough, or whether they're not fit enough and that's the reason why they're not working hard enough. Sam in Lilydale, welcome to you, Sam.
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. I wasn't going to call up, but just hearing all the callers that I've listened to kind of deflecting the blame on Joel Embiid, I think is comical because with Embiid, you can tell that he's giving 110% effort every time he's on the court. He's playing with a torn meniscus. He was physically stuffed because he's defending, scoring, he's doing everything. So these callers that have just checked the box score and seen that he's had 8 turnovers and he's missed some shots, at least he's trying to do something. You look up and he sees his teammate Ben Simmons, who is scared to hold the ball. He's playing hot potato with the ball. Wants to get rid of it as soon as he touches it. Of course he's going to be upset with that. So I think the pile-on Embiid by our Aussie supporters here is a bit nuts. And just the Zach Williams thing as well ties into Ben Simmons because I think that when Zach Williams got signed, I was one of the few people who thought that was way overs. But in the media, a lot of people were saying this is a great signing for Carlton, this is what they have to do. So the pile-on is a little bit too harsh because the signing initially was a little bit overrated in my opinion.
Yeah, you've probably hit the nail on the head, Sam. I bought the signing as being a good thing. I thought it was going to be great. I liked the idea of having 2 hard-running wingmen or a wing half-back flank combo as hard runners to move the ball. And I think David Teague, in some ways, needs that for his game style, to play that attacking game style. He needed that kind of player to be added. So why it hasn't worked is the big conundrum because, they do have Sam Walsh. They do have Patrick Cripps. They do have Harry Mackay, who's probably going to win the Coleman. They do have Jones. They do have Wiedering. So, that they've got pieces of the puzzle to be better than 14th. And people jumped on me yesterday for saying, they've got the list to be 9th or 10th on the ladder right now. I do think they've got the list that, if it was performing at a level where I thought it was able to perform at, they would be 9th or 10th right now. But they're 14th, and at the moment they are going to have an investigation. They've got a panel assembled to investigate it, and it will be nice to find out quite a bit from that investigation. But whether we do, we didn't find out much from Adelaide, so I won't be holding my breath to find out much from Carlton's either. I appreciate your call, Sam, in Lilydale, and we'll send you up to Club Mandalay, a must-play course in Melbourne's north, for a midweek round of golf for 2 on us when you get a chance to head up there. I appreciate your call. Michael in Preston, you there, Michael?
Yeah, Dwayne. It's interesting. More money, more scrutiny. I think Ben Simmons is probably, as you say, when you're on the big money, you're supposed to perform. But if it goes down that track, what about someone like a Daniel Ricciardo? I mean, he's switched teams. And it's always the car's fault. Although I really like Daniel, I reckon he comes across as being a really good bloke. But Ben Simmons is under this massive scrutiny, and Daniel Ricciardo seems to get away with nothing.
Yeah, the F1 world's a little bit different because the drivers kind of bring a money element to their drive as well. So, what they're being paid is part of the lure as a driver. Okay, do the sponsors want to be part of the Daniel Ricciardo part of it? Look, if the other McLarens getting much better finishes than Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren, then there is that finger pointed all the time. How come you're driving the same car in essence? How come you're not driving it as well? So I get that part of it. And look, every sport's a little bit different. Every employment is a little bit different. I mean, this show is the same. I mean, if I don't rate, if I come on with the idea of doing Midday Madness for 2 hours and at the end of the year, Hutchie says, well, that didn't work. Midday Madness, you didn't get enough ratings and we didn't get enough calls and no one liked the idea. You're outski. Well, that's my game plan that failed and I'm outski. So that's the bottom line. We all have to perform for our dough. And I love doing Midday Madness, and if it works, it's fun for me. And there's so many callers on the line. I'm going to keep that fun going straight after the break. Stick around. It's great to have your company on Dwayne's World. Keep your text coming through on the Temper text machine. 0433 98 11 16 is the Temper text machine number. Temper, T-E-M-P-U-R, mattresses and pillows like no other. And I'll read a heap out during the course of the program, as always. And your calls on the Werribee Kia open line, 1300 736 736. Nathan in Pakenham, thanks for holding. Welcome to you.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Just a couple things on the Blues. Do you reckon Zach Williams will have seen that, or he'll be shown that by someone from the club?
I think it'll get back to him, Nathan, some way, shape or form. And everyone's different. Some people consume it all, and then it can be good for them. Some people consume it all and then it can be bad for them. Some people consume none of it and they should consume some. So it depends. Everyone's a little different, Nathan. But I think somehow it'll get back to him even if they don't watch the segment.
And just the other thing, just with the Blues pushing Wiedering and Cripps out yesterday with the Teague thing and saying they backed him. Do you reckon that is a push or do you reckon that's what they actually believe?
No, I think the players, it was interesting to put the players up. I did say yesterday, I thought it was, after the players could have shown their effort with their effort on the field, they then had to actually show their effort with nouns and verbs at a press conference. So, maybe they were told to go out there and you be responsible for it in a way. Teague's spoken to the media post-game, so over to you players, over to you leaders, you go and address it. Maybe they're putting some more responsibility back on the players there to be. And I talked about scrutiny a couple of days ago on this program. I liked, but I grew up in the era where you got feedback. You got feedback from fans in the street when I was playing for Port Adelaide, when I was playing for Geelong, because that was your local community. The guy in the coffee shop giving you the coffee, he watched you play on the weekend. He knew you missed that goal. He knew you didn't perform well. He knew you failed in that spoil attempt that cost us the game. I mean, I was on a end-of-season trip after a lost grand final for Port Adelaide years and years ago. I was in Fiji, and I was walking down the main street of Fiji about 2 weeks after the grand final, and someone came up to me there and said, "You're Dwayne Russell, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you cost us the grand final a couple of weeks ago with that pass that should have hit Ebert on the chest." I mean, that's just the era that I grew up in. But I grew up in an era where you took it in your stride and actually thought, yeah, the guy's right. And don't get too offended by it because that's just the feedback that we get in that era. It's a little bit different with the feedback world we're in now, Nathan. So it's going to be interesting to see how they filter it at Carlton. Stuart and Murrumbina, welcome to you, Stuart.
Hey, Dwayne, thanks for your show, mate. My take on this Carlton Williams thing is the money and what the club prepared to pay. Like, I agree with you when you said at the start of the year it was probably a good idea to get Williams, but not at $850 or whatever it is, I'm not sure. But You know what? Let's get him at $650, and then that's a good pickup. It's this romance of getting these players, and I think other clubs are probably better at drawing the line and said, well, only like an auction, you only go so far. It just seems that, you know, if he was on 650 and playing like this, would we be talking about him now like this?
Yeah, Stuart, the hard part with the club trying to do what Carlton did is who's available now. So it's a bit like the coaching circus we've got now. Collingwood's looking for a coach, but who's available now? So Clarko's not available. So they might want Clarko. They might love to have Damien Hardwick, but they're not available now. And it's the same with Carlton's recruitment. They've probably had 7 or 8 or 20 guys that they might have rathered in ahead of Zach Williams if they could get them in a perfect world. But who was available? Well, Sard was available and Zach Williams was available. So how much do you commit to getting that guy now? Because you desperately need that change now, Stuart.
Yeah, I suppose, it's more about where do you draw the line.
I know. So would you wouldn't have, sold the farm to get him? Is the kind of guy that you say, okay, well, if we can't get him for this, let's let him go somewhere else or let him stay where he is because we're not prepared. And I'm a bit like that when it comes to the years of commitment. So I don't mind paying guys big bucks, but when you lock into 5-year deals at big bucks, that's when I think it can cost you. If you lock into a deal that's only a short-term deal to try and give a guy big bucks and get into your club, I kind of get that. But, if you're locked into that deal for 5 years, then it can be, a ball and chain for you. I appreciate your call, Stuart. Great to have your call, and we'll send you up to Club Mandalay as well on us for a midweek round of golf for 2 with the Carts when you can get up there. Matthew and Hendon, I know you want to talk to Gold Coast and you've been holding for a while. I promised you come to you first straight after the break. Shane in North Fitzroy, Baz in Coburg, Ty in Cheltenham. It's Midday Madness. You call, you get on. 2 hours of your calls. Later in the program, Andrew Bogut will join us. So we'll talk some more basketball with Bogey and Sam Edmund if there is breaking news on whether we can get 50% capacity crowd at sporting events in Victoria across this weekend. Stick around, you're with Dwaynesville. Great to have your company, Matthew and Hendon. Thanks for holding as we head back to the calls.
Best wishes, Dwayne, to you and your family. I just want to say the loss to Norwood was far worse than any other one you can ever mention. And whatever losing 2007 to Geelong. Anyway, Dwayne, I've been blind for 40 years and I've got a white cane, but I think the people that don't want Gold Coast, we need 2 teams in every state, but I think Victoria could evaporate 2 teams from the 10 and make it 8. That would be good. Have one in Tasmania, have one in Northern Territory. But I am mad at Gold Coast because they cost me about $2,000. If they only had got to 39 points and not 1 point over 39, I would have been doing quite well. But that's what made me mad. But we love Gold Coast. We need them. And I'm just disgusted with Dewey not putting up a better performance.
Yeah, Matthew, it's the better performance that I'm on the same wavelength with you as. Thanks for your call down there in Hendon and the mention of Norwood. As I said yesterday and last week, I don't care if the Gold Coast don't win a flag in the next 30 years. If it takes them 50 years to win their first flag, then I'm okay with it. What they've got to do is just be better than 14th every year. They have to do what Fremantle has done, what the Giants have done. They've got to play finals, be competitive. Melbourne's not won for 50 years. St Kilda won flag in 100 years. It's not about winning flags. It's about actually just challenging and being competitive and giving your supporters and the competition bang for buck as well. We've been talking about giving bang for buck for the last hour when it comes to people like Ben Simmons or Zach Williams. It's the same with the Gold Coast. We just need them to be a bit more competitive and to make that 9th game of the weekend just as watchable as the 2nd or 3rd best performed teams of the weekend playing in their games. So that's the task they've got for Stuart Dew now for the last half of this season. Don't make it Groundhog Day. Don't make Year 11 the same story as the first 10, where you fizzle out in the end of the season. Everybody talks about, whether you should or shouldn't be better. Give us something in the last couple of months of the season to, breed hope and have your players say, yeah, of course we're committed. We're going to sign long-term deals to be here. I don't think we're ever, and I said this yesterday, I don't think there'll ever be a time where there's no Gold Coast Suns. They're in and they're sticking around forever. If Tasmania come in, it'll be a 19th licence. But we just need to find a way that the Gold Coast can be better, or we might address their quest to get more money after the break. I wouldn't bother me if the AFL committed more money to the Gold Coast specifically for development in their northern areas, because the draft is such now that you get first crack at the best talent in the territory and in Queensland anyway in the coming drafts. they don't get first go at it. We'll talk about that after the break. Always fun to have your company for the second hour of Midday Madness. So you call, you get on. That's the Midday Madness promise. And the open line number brought to us by Werribee Kia is 1300 736 736. You call, you get on. We'll take your calls for the next hour. Anything in the world of sport you'd like to chat about, then dial the number. Werribee Kia, open for business. Drop down and see them. Tell them we sent you. And if you're in the market for a new or used car, they've got a huge showroom, huge demo stock as well. And they're all down there. David, Janan, Aid, Jim, the whole team. They'd love to see you. Janan as well. Ty in Cheltenham's been holding for a while. Welcome to you, Ty.
Hey, g'day, mate. I love your show, Dwayne. I really do.
Thank you.
Just with Simmons, mate, that's funny. I'm hearing everything, and I really feel for the guy. But what it is, I mean, it's 5-on-5 at the moment in offense. They're playing 4-on-5. He's just not involved. It's really hard for the other team. They're not going to win, and you can see he's got the yips like Ian Bacon-Fitch got him, mate. He can't actually he can't shoot. But as soon as the ball goes to defense, he's all over it. He loves it. He just doesn't like the offensive side of the court. He just got his get his head straight a little bit, I think, and he looks like he's got the Nick Kyrgios attitude, but he's got all the skill in the world, but more worried about Instagram than he is actually about rehearsing.
So, Ty, let me ask you this question. Giannis Antetokounmpo also has his issues at the free throw line. In fact, the way the crowd were counting him down to the expiration of his free throw time in the games against the Nets was unbelievable. And yet, during the course of that game where he was being heckled, he actually got better in the clutch moments in that win over the Nets. So he had great mental strength.
Yeah, I find the technical aspect of how he's actually shooting with his elbow bent out to the right. It's just it feels like it's 101 where technically he's not set up right, but you think you'd have everything under the world and every video under the world to help him get better. But technically, and he's shooting the ball so flat, it's never going to go in. It's really funny from the outside. Everyone's just showing him. All the crowd are there, just get the ball in. And and obviously I do watch his Insta. And God, he got lit up last night, and I do feel for him because I was actually worried about him. He's got to have good people around him in a situation like this because he's gone very, very quiet on the Insta, where usually he does post a lot of things about cars and the wrong things, Louis Vuitton handbags, which he shouldn't do. He just needs better people around him, and hopefully he gets better. But I think a trade might actually do him a good just to wake him up a bit.
Ty, great to have you call. We'll send you up to Club Mandalay, must-play course in Melbourne's north on us. I appreciate you jumping on the line. Midday Madness, 1300 736 736. Your calls and your texts on the Temper text machines. Keep your texts coming, 0433 98 11 16. A few of your texts that have come through in the last half an hour. Hi, Dwayne. Dave is right. He was talking about crowds. We went to the Blues v Hawks this year at the MCG. We were jammed in like sardines in the top tier in a few bays, while most bays were empty. Crazy. Cheers, Alan. Thanks for that. And quite a few texts have come through saying that it's strange, this jam-in factor now as opposed to spread everybody up factor. Talking bang for buck, Dwayne, the AFL needs to let fans that are paying hundreds of dollars for their membership into games after getting nothing last year. Make crowds 100% and let people sit in their reserve seats. It's not going to be 100% in the coming weeks, but we have got our fingers crossed, and Sam Edmund hopefully will join us in about half an hour's time if we get news that it might be 50% for the A-League Grand Final, which would be fantastic for Melbourne City to have 50% at least. For Melbourne United, for their Game 3 of their NBL Grand Final against the Perth Wildcats, and of course for the AFL games that are going to be held in Victoria across this coming weekend. Tom Lynch gets paid unders to be at the Tigers, and he can go quiet and the side covers for him. If he was at the Blues, the quiet games would be dissected endlessly. It's not just about the bloke, but also about the team. That's a pretty good text as well, it must be said. Have a look at Doc Rivers' last 7 playoff seasons as a coach. There's your reason for the loss. So that's from Tanner, one person pointing the finger at the coach, Doc Rivers. And Ben Simmons, second highest paid player, has huge impact on the team's ability to get other players. Gaze is delusional if he says that's not relevant. What Gazy said was that the pile-on that Ben Simmons was getting was a bit unfair, and that the money shouldn't be a reason for so many people going that hard at him on Instagram and going so hard at him in general with their words in radio interviews, etc. But as I said earlier, there is a level of scrutiny that comes with the level of money that you're receiving, and we find that not only overseas but here in the AFL as well. And talking about money, even with members of AFL clubs, you feel like you're paying your membership for those players to be paid. I mean, that's kind of the feel when you're contributing as a member. You feel like, in a way, you're contributing to the club, which pays the players. So your contribution to the salary cap is being used up for those players. And talking here about, hey, Dwayne, love the smackdown Tony Cochran did to Nick Riewoldt on the couch last night. I can understand Riewoldt has a passion to get an AFL side in Tasmania, but to have a crack at the Gold Coast poor history was a bit rich, and Nick was put straight back in his box by Cochran with his St Kilda line, one flag in 130 years. Thanks for that, Russell in Romsey. If you didn't hear that from on the couch last night, here's Tony Cochran just letting Nick Riewoldt know that flags are hard to win, and they've only been in the competition 10 years, the Gold Coast. Here's Tony Cochran.
So how do you define success as a football club?
Oh, well, as you know, Rui, because you come from a club that's got, 130 years of history and you've won one. So they're not exactly easy things to take off the shelf.
Tony Cochran in response to Nick Riewoldt's question last night. Thanks for your text. And one here on the All-Australian team. I was talking earlier on about at the halfway point of the season that the AFL website in their All-Australian team didn't have a Richmond player in it, which was an interesting look to me, given that Richmond's always struggled to get players in the All-Australian team, even in their premiership years. Some teams have 7, 8 guys in the All-Australian team in their premiership years. Richmond's only had, in their 3 premiership years of recent times, 2, 2 and 2 All-Australians. One here, can we lock Jared Lyons into the All-Australian team right now, please? Deserves it so much. Always been unbelievably underrated his entire career, Tom in Mentone. Thanks for that one as well. Keep your text coming, 0433 98 11 16. And we're back to your calls after the break as well. 1300 736 736, the open line, brought to us by Werribee Kia. You call, you get on. That's the Midday Madness promise. Straight back to your calls next. Mentioned earlier on that the crowd number in Victoria news might start filtering through during the course of the afternoon. Well, it started filtering through now. We were keeping our fingers crossed for 50%. Well, Fox Sports is reporting that the A-League Grand Final will be played at Amy Park with at least a 50% capacity. So with the words at least thrown in there, who knows, we might even get more than 50%, but they're expecting, according to that story, at least a 50% capacity for the A-League Grand Final. The game, we're told, will be moved, according to that Fox Sports report, from Saturday night to a 4 p.m. Sunday twilight time slot for that clash between Melbourne City and Sydney FC. So that's the latest there. If you're an A-League fan, a Melbourne City fan, it might be a changed slot for you. Saturday night, instead of Saturday night, to a 4 p.m. Sunday twilight slot. So there you go. That's the report latest. But 50% capacity looks like it's on the agenda. 1300 736 736 as we return to your calls on the open line, brought to us by Werribee Kia, and a couple of your texts. Keep your texts coming through 0433 98 11 16 on the Temper text machine, TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. Dwayne, Melbourne City struggles to get 5,000 to a game. They'll be racked with 50% capacity. Well, they'll get more for a grand final than that. So I reckon they'd jam-pack the 50% capacity line if they are allowed 50%, and they'd probably get more if they're allowed 70, 75%. One here on the Gold Coast as well. It was interesting to play and rehear the Tony Cochran chat with Nick Riewoldt on the couch last night. But I wanted to play you this as well, just to put a bit of a full stop on this argument about a 19th team in Tasmania. Now, Tony Cochran has been telling us that he doesn't think we can afford a 19th franchise for the AFL. But it is an interesting comparison when you hear what Tony Cochran said to what we heard from Brian Cook on this show last week about Tasmania. It sounds to me as if, and talking to Brett Godfrey on this program earlier this week, it sounds to me as if Tasmania will get a team, a 19th franchise. It sounds to me now it's just a matter of when. And that reoccurred to me when I heard Tony Cochran say that, in essence, to him, it's just about when as well. Firstly, here's Tony Cochran on the expansion, not now, but maybe in 3 to 5 years.
Well, Rui, what I did was I read the initial report, written by a bloke, I might add, who chaired it, who 3 weeks after handing in the report went and joined the board of the Australian Rugby Union. I'm not sure that's kind of the dedication we want in AFL circles. And then I took my time freely to spend, I think it was nearly an hour and a half in a Zoom meeting with Colin Carter to go through all my comments and all my thoughts about that report with Colin. So I have schooled myself here. I do come with a fairly large business brain when it comes to sport, and that's been my way I've tried to make a quid for 45 years. And I just do not believe that anybody can convince me personally, and I happen to know many other presidents as well, that in the current climate, and what I mean by that is probably the next 3 to 5 years, we could consider expanding the 18-team competition.
So Tony Cochrane saying not in the next 3 to 5 years. I haven't heard Tony put a time frame on it before. I've just heard him say that no to a 19th licence. So even it sounds as if Tony Cochrane is of the belief that after this 3 to 5 year period, maybe there will be a chance. Maybe it is going to be a 19th team in Tassie after this period is over and done with. Brian Cook last week said we do need a 19th team in Tasmania, but he also said that not for the next couple of years. So he's kind of on the same page as Tony Cochrane. It's just that their timeline's different. Here's Cookie from this show last week.
I think Tasmania deserve a team, more so than anywhere else around Australia, for a lot of reasons. The history of the AFL in Tasmania and all sorts of issues. The issue will be, in my opinion, the affordability and the underwriting. So if both the AFL and Tasmania will underwrite this team for a long period of time, then I think it's a distinct possibility. In my opinion, over the next 2 or 3 years, probably not. In the next 5 or 6 years, I think it starts to make sense.
So there you go. In the next 5 or 6, it makes sense for Brian Cook. And you heard Tony Cochrane, not in the next 3 to 5, but they've both got this 6 as common ground. So maybe they are going to get a team. It's just a matter of it's 5 or 6 years away as opposed to being 2 or 3 years away. A couple of your texts that have come through as well. Melbourne haven't competed for a flag since the year 2000. It's been 21 years. Why is it okay to pile on to the Gold Coast? They've only been around for 11 years. Michael in Q as well. I'll take a few of your calls on this. 1300 736 736. Thanks for that text as well. And the All-Australian certainties. If you've got a couple, give us a text, 0433 98 11 16. Or if you want to give us a call, 1300 736 736. As I mentioned, the AFL website didn't have any Richmond players in their All-Australian team last week. A couple of texts have come through on that. One here, that's because the Tigers are a team. Shane, thanks for that. And Richmond is another text from Jason. Richmond don't get All-Australians because they are the best 22 and have the same system. Have the best system. Backs up the old saying that a team of champions would always... that a team of champions will always beat a team of champions. The text doesn't quite read the way it's supposed to, but I know what your point is, Jason. Thanks for that, and you've added it on the bottom. But in saying that, Grimes and Vlosten have been extremely hard done by in recent seasons. I had a look at the All-Australian team myself and thought of the names that are automatics for me at this stage. And there's an interesting, Marcus Bontempelli's obviously got to be in. Darcy Parish has got to be in. Be interesting to see how many Melbourne defenders get in. Stephen May, Jake Lever, Christian Salem are all having really good seasons, but so too guys like Jacob Wiedering and Liam Jones would be contenders from a team like Carlton, who at the moment, even though we're talking about the fact they've got no defence, the numbers for Jacob Wiedering and Liam Jones aren't too bad, so they've got to be contenders at least for the All-Australian squad of 40. You've got some other guys as well, like Hugh McCluggage in the midfield, not just Bont, but Hugh McCluggage, Clayton Oliver, the ruck spot. A few people saying on the text Max Gawn, but Tom Hickey's had a pretty good season as well. Tom Hickey, with a big finish to the season, might be a contender for a bench ruck spot. Tom Liberatore has been the clearance and get down and dirty specialist. A few teams have tried to shut him down in recent times, which shows how important he's been to the midfield. Jack McRae's been mentioned on the text. Thanks for that as well. And a couple in the forward line. Well, Harry Mackay has to be in there. He's going to win the Coleman, so you'd think Harry would absolutely be in there. Taylor Walker is having a great resurrection season as well. So Tex, you would think, would be a contender in there to grab an All-Australian spot, which would be a fantastic story for Tex. Christian Petrarca is just about a lock to be in that forward line, so you can pretty much put him in as 100% certainty unless something goes completely awry in the second half of the season. Ollie Wines, and I'd have Shea Bolton in there as well as a Richmond player. Which other Richmond players? 1300 736 736. And another one here on the text as well, Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody. So keep your text coming through. Tom Stewart has to be a lock. Thanks for that. Absolutely has to be a lock. Tom Stewart is having that kind of season. So a great reminder that he needs to be in there. Hi, Dwayne. Bailey Fritsch as the small forward. Paul from Melton. Thanks for that as well. The standards set for Dusty are ridiculous. He's won 4 games for the Tigers this year with his own efforts and been pretty handy in most others. He should be All-Australian. Thanks for that. Well, there won't be any Fife in the team this year. There won't be any Patrick Dangerfield in the Australian team this year, and Lachie Neale as well. Nick Nat, by far the best ruckman this year. Thanks for that addition on the text. I appreciate that as well. And Dwayne, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of Richmond performance we get in the second half of the season. That might be the determining factor as to how many All-Australians they get. Absolutely it will be, because right now they're 8th. If they drop out of the 8, it might be a different story as to if they climb up the ladder and end up finishing in the top 4 by the end of the home and away season. Andrew Gaze, we talked about the Ben Simmons Olympics situation. We're about to talk to Andrew Bogut in about 15-20 minutes time from now. So just as a preempt, if you didn't hear Andrew Gaze pleading for Ben Simmons to do whatever he can to get to the Olympics earlier today on Gary and Tim, here's Andrew Gaze on that.
I would say absolutely you should do whatever it takes in order for you to join the Australian team, not just for what it means for Australian basketball, but what it means for you. For me, I came through, and the greatest education I had was being involved in the Australian team. It is a culture like no others. And when you're in a situation where you're looking for support, you're looking for your teammates to wrap your arms around you, you're looking for a nation to get behind you and show support, there is no greater environment than the Australian Olympic basketball teams. And that's a culture that's been handed down from generations to generations to generations. And regardless of whatever personal situation they have, Paddy Mills, Joe Ingles, Aaron Baines, all those other players that are involved in the Australian team, they will wrap their arms around Ben Simmons like no other, because that is the culture of the Boomers. So I would implore him to do whatever it takes to be involved in that, because it's the greatest education you can have as a human being is going to the Olympics and pulling on a green and gold jersey for the Australian Olympic basketball team.
Andrew Gay is showing his passion on Gary and Tim this morning, saying that it will be the thing to do if he could advise Ben Simmons. Here's Chris Anstey when I asked him yesterday, would it be hard for Simmons to win over the Australian public if he didn't play at the Olympic Games? Here's one of our other all-time greats, Chris Anstey, on that. It would be. It'd be hard for Ben Simmons to ever get the Australian public back if he knocked back the Olympics, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would be. And even on social media is where we get our facts at the moment. Paddy Mills is away, decked out in his Australian gear every day, working his butt off. Joe Ingles was only eliminated a few days ago and he's already got his bonus. He's getting ready for camp in Vegas. So I'd love to see the exact same thing from Ben Simmons, that he has a few days off, time to regroup, puts on the green and gold, goes and meets his teammates and really has a fair dinkum crack at this.
Chris Anstey on the program yesterday. So back to your calls, 1300 736 736. All Australians that you think are locks at this stage. And also a quick thought, because this story, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but we're hearing that 30% of your senior coach's wage might not get included in the football department cap, if not next year, pretty damn soon. Are you happy if 30% of his senior coach's wage doesn't get included? Because that's what we're hearing the AFL is looking at doing. So, for example, if Alistair Clarkson gets $1 million a year, then $300,000 of his $1 million doesn't get counted in the football department cap. So that's essentially 2 more assistants or physios. If you don't want to get 2 more assistant coaches, you can get a physio and an assistant coach that can be employed by the club that otherwise wouldn't be employed by the club. Luke Beveridge has talked about this quite a bit. There's been some that have been pushing for 50% of the coach's wage to not get included in the football department cap. Others have been pushing for the whole lot. I don't think the whole lot's going to happen, but it would be interesting if the whole lot didn't get included. But your thoughts on that? Are you happy with 30%? Because that's what I'm hearing the AFL is looking at doing. 30% of your senior coach's wage not be included in the football department cap. So essentially, there's going to be an opportunity for clubs to pay one or two extras as assistant coaches, physios, an extra doctor, or whatever. 1300 736 736. Rob on the road. You there, Rob? You're on the air, Rob. Welcome to you. Yeah, you're on the air, Rob. Welcome to you.
Is that me?
Yeah, it is you, Rob. Welcome to you.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, Dwayne. I want to know what you think about the correlation between the success of, or lack of success of the Suns and what happened to Fitzroy years ago. Because I remember Fitzroy were in finals and then sort of a couple of years later they were then defunct. Now, was that just purely financial? And the AFL are propping up or paying a lot of money for the Suns up there. So if they took away that, that financial backing, where does that leave the Suns?
Oh, I don't think the Suns will ever die, Rob. I think they're here forever. So I'm not one of those that believe, they've got 5 more years to prove themselves, and if they don't prove themselves, they're out. I think they'll be around forever. I think the growth market of Queensland is something the AFL want to keep growing and keep growing football. They see it as a long-term issue. The Fitzroy issue was interesting, Rob, because the Sydney Swans, or South Melbourne moving to the Sydney Swans, seemed to work so well that Fitzroy it appeared to have a low supporter base. They weren't able to perform. And yet when you look at their last team, and when you look at some of the Fitzroy teams that they had in their last few years, I mean, it was a reasonably good team. There were some good names in there. It did go downhill so quickly, and look, if the AFL had their time over again, but the VFL was in a lot of trouble back then. So that's the issue. I mean, the VFL was in dire straits. We needed to have a national competition, and in some ways, Fitzroy moving north and becoming, the Brisbane Bears hasn't really been a long life thought that it's still Fitzroy evolving into the Brisbane Bears, unfortunately. But you're right about their last few years. I mean, the last few years, they finished third in 86, and then after that, 11th, 12th, 6th under Rod Austin, 12th, 14th, 10th, 11th, 14th, 16th, and 16th in 96. So that was their last 10 years, and then out of the competition. But, when you look at Fitzroy's last ever team as well, it had some pretty good names in it. So, yeah, it's upset a lot of people, and it doesn't really seem to be that Fitzroy association with the Brisbane Bears, even though they've got that big line on their jumper, and it's great to see it. Appreciate your call, Rob. Costa in Richmond, you there, Costa?
Hi, Dwayne. Look, the crowds at the footy, mate, I don't think, they should be allowed until we really get on top of this virus. I lost my uncle to coronavirus, and, I'm sort of, at the start, I was young and naive sort of in my mentality and thinking, but now, after losing a family member, I'm a bit like, let's just get rid of this crap virus, mate, and just get back on with life.
So do you think we should hold off on crowds for the rest of this season, Costa?
Not the rest of the season. I reckon just until they're certain that, there's not going to be another snap lockdown or some crap like that, mate. It's just let's just get right on top of it and say, right, we've had 10 days or 20 days of 0 cases or whatever, and then just let them back in at full capacity, stuff this 50% or 25% crap. Because when you watch it on TV, it's got no atmosphere. It's not even worth it. They had 7,000 at Geelong on Friday night, and it wasn't worth watching, mate.
Yeah, I'll disagree with you on that, but I'll agree with your point, and you're right to make it because you've been caught in the middle of it, and our heart goes out to you, Costa, and to all those people that have been affected, and we do need to take that into account. And what's happened in Sydney in the last couple of days does remind us that it can break quickly. So, yeah, we have to take that into account. I suppose what we're trying to do now is do something that advances us forward, but also keeps us safe. And that's the fine line the government are trying to work through right now when we look at 50%. I really appreciate your call, Costa, and my heart goes out to you. It's been a tough time for a lot of people that have lost loved ones. Tom in Greensboro, you there, Tom?
Yeah, how are you, Dwayne?
Good.
Look, I think the coaching salary needs to be at 100% out of the salary cap. I think we constantly hear from people like Chris Scott just how mentally debilitating the job is on the senior coach. You look at Beveridge, talking about the fact that he's embarrassed that his salary, prevents other people from being able to be employed and the knock-ons of that. I just sort of think, if we're going to have the coach constantly as a scapegoat, like you're looking at Stuart, people are calling for the head of Stuart Dew, for, David Teague. If we're going to be able to call for these guys' heads, we've got to be able to have, them outside the salary cap so they can be paid out and someone else can be brought in. Like, there was talk last year about moving Simon Goodwin off. Now, obviously, that's turned out to be good for Melbourne, but, at the time they were saying, well, we can't afford to do it because, we wouldn't be able to afford a new senior coach because of his contract and because of the cap.
So you think 100%. It'd be interesting to gauge it, Tom. We'll put it to the test. Have you got a text? Send it through. 0433 98 11 16. What percentage of the senior coach's wage should be outside the football department cap? Should it be 100% like Tom is suggesting it should be? And I appreciate your call, Tom. Or should it be 30%, which I'm hearing is the preferred option right now? The AFL is now contemplating it. What should it be? 1300 736 736. I'll take your calls after the break or send through a text 0433 98 11 16. It's Midday Madness. It's about you. Andrew Gaze to join us after 2. In fact, Andrew Bogut, I should say, to join us after 2 o'clock. Straight back to your calls and your texts, as is the Midday Madness promise. Andrew Bogut to join us after 2 o'clock. A couple of texts that have come through before we head to your calls. And I know Tola in Ballarat, Chris and Camberwell, you're on the line. A couple of texts for Temper to EMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. Dwayne, wouldn't it make more sense, and we're talking about the senior coaches having 30% of their wage, perhaps the AFL looking at having 30% of their wage not included in the football department cap. One here on the text from Marie, wouldn't it make more sense to set, for example, a $300,000 cap for coaches instead of a percentage? That way the inequity between coaches' salaries doesn't advantage the richer teams. And it's a good text, Marie. The way I'm hearing that it might work is that if you want to pay a coach $700,000 a year, then 30% of that won't count in the football department cap. If you want to pay $800,000, 30% of that won't count. If you want to pay $1 million, then 30% of that won't count. But it's capped at around that $300,000 mark. So anything you pay a coach over $1 million, for example, and it might end up being capped at $800,000, but anything you pay over $1 million, you still only get $300,000 worth of relief for it. So you can pay your coach $2 million a year if you want, but only $300,000 will be not included in the football department cap. So you're spot on, Marie, and I appreciate your text because it did remind me that was what I was hearing would be the go. Tola in Ballarat, you there, Tola?
Yes, Dwayne. We hear all the time over the last few weeks about Carlton, and the main problem is through their midfield, etc. Well, I was just wondering, because I'm a 46-year Essendon member, and we had a pretty good outside midfielder called Brent Standard. Yeah, right, I'm getting tongue-tied, you know what I mean.
Brent Standard, yep.
Yeah, and he was, as I said, an outside midfielder, and yet here he is coaching Carlton's midfield. So it seems to me that you've got to have a good look at the fact that who you've got coaching in midfield.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tola, because just because he was an outside midfielder doesn't mean that he doesn't know what it's like to play as an inside mid. That's just your role, and sometimes you've got to play your role, and sometimes, that was criticised in the 80s and 90s. In the 2000s, you're an outside player and you're not worth as much as the inside guy, but I think we've now come to realise that outside delivery guys who can hit a pass target on the chest are worth their weight in gold. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's not going to be able to coach what it's like to be an inside mid. Your point is valid, though, Tola, and I appreciate your call. But the interesting part to me when I look at coaches is sometimes I do wonder if you have to have done it as a coach to be able to get the players to believe in what you're talking about. So if you do hear from a guy who hasn't been an inside midfielder at AFL level, he's only been an inside midfielder at VFL level, are you going to believe it as much as if you were told something by Chris Judd or if you were told something by Greg Williams? That's the issue for me. There has to be a level of believability for what you're saying, and sometimes having done it raises your level of believability. So, that's where, me telling somebody how to play centre-half forward for Geelong is a hell of a lot different than Barry Stoneham telling someone, or Billy Brownless telling someone, or Gary Ablett Sr. telling someone, because what they've got to say has added weight because they've been able to do it over a long period of time, week in, week out, for a decade. So it's a lot different. So I think your point in that respect is valid. Chris in Camberwell, are you there, Chris?
Oh, good day, Dwayne. Dwayne, I wanted to take 3 points up with you. The first one, you talked about all Australian. I want to throw one up which is really outside in Tom McDonald. Now, Tom McDonald was written off by everyone this year, and he's had an extraordinary performance at centre-half forward for Melbourne, and he's set up many attacks. Although you won't see the goals on the board, I think he's kicked round 24 or 25. Now, the other one I wanted to take up with you is the VFL. Dwayne, we can't play Brown and we can't play Vandenberg, so we can't really see their form, their back. And Melbourne's played 5 games and Collingwood 5 games and Apsley 8 and all the rest of the league have played 6. Except Melbourne and Collingwood, which have only played 5. Melbourne's in 3rd position on the VFL. This is a lopsided competition at the moment. When are Melbourne going to play its games, and who are they playing? And my last point is about the salary cap. I personally believe for coaching, Gold Coast should be helped, and also North Melbourne. What's your view on that? And also Melbourne that have missed games. One last one. Melbourne that have missed games, especially big drawing games at the MCG, could be in financial trouble unless you've got the membership. And that's the big games, Essendon and Collingwood. And even the Bulldogs with that game with Melbourne with hardly anything for the Bulldogs. What do you think can be done about that? And shouldn't all the money be pulled at the end of the season for every game and divided up into the needs basis? I think we'd have a better competition and a much fairer one. A bit like the draft with clubs that are in trouble financially. What's your view on that one?
Some interesting thoughts there with all of that. Chris, I get what you're saying about the VFL. Some of the feeder teams are playing around Australia. Some of the feeder teams aren't playing around Australia. So it's got to help with your depth. If you've got guys that have been playing and they're in form, I think the VFL, you will get some games in the next few weeks to get some games back into your players. So I think that's not going to be a problem. I think in some ways you've answered your own questions, Chris. So I appreciate what you've had to say, especially... Tom McDonald is one of those that I don't think will make it, but I love your Melbourne passion, and maybe he will end up making the squad of 40, but I don't think he will at present time. I think there's a lot of other guys that are ahead of him in the queue, Chris, but I love your Melbourne passion, and I love having your calls come through. Ron in Port Melbourne, you there, Ron?
G'day, Dwayne, how you going?
Good.
You can scratch off Sam Mitchell from Collingwood's list. He said no to their approach.
Hey, you know that for a fact, do you, Ron?
I do.
Well, I'll take that as being confirmed. So just to repeating that, Ron, you're telling me Sam Mitchell is not going to be interviewed at all by Collingwood. He said no.
That's correct.
Appreciate your call. On that note, we'll take a break. More after the break. Straight back to your calls. Dan in Wodonga. Welcome to you, Dan.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
That's the go. Just want to put a second or another point of view towards your comment before about, for example, Chris Judd being an inside midfielder and coaching an inside midfielder and all that sort of stuff. I think there's another side to it too. So I'm going to come from, and this is where I got to it. My partner, she's coaching at quite a high junior level, never played the game, all that sort of stuff, but has been a student of the game for quite a while, and I feel she has a lot to give to that sort of thing, and it's always a difference of opinion. I can go with the fact that, per se, Gary Ablett might have been the greatest full forward to ever play, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can coach. I believe he can actually add bits to it, but the coaching part of it is a different mindset. Just because you can tick those boxes and you've actually done it, does it carry more weight? And I think even with the younger kids these days and the people coming through, they're happy to take that information from everywhere, not just from the legends that have done it.
No, I agree with you on that. So when it comes to Chris Fagan or David Noble, who did play the game for Fitzroy, but has coached for a long period of time. Chris Fagan's coached for a long period of time. When it comes to coaching, this is just my view. I think the guys that have done it, they walk into a club as a coach and they have the instant, immediate respect. So they have got it straight away. It's almost as if people are hanging off every word they've got to say straight away. Whereas I think a Chris Fagan or a David Noble has to then get that respect and gain it over time. And then you realise as a player, okay, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm listening to this guy. He's been around long enough for me to respect his opinion, to understand where he's coming from. And I want to give my all for him because his game plan sounds like it's absolutely spot on. So I think there's more of an earning of respect for those people who don't walk in with instant respect. So, yeah, I agree with you. You can coach having never played the game. I mean, there's people that call this program up that have never played AFL, and yet they actually, often prove me wrong or say something that I didn't think of, and they're 100% right. So that's what it comes down to, Dan. If you've watched a lot of footy and you know your footy, you can coach at any level. I'm 100% behind that. But you don't walk in with the instant respect that, say, a Blighty walked into at Geelong when he walked in to coach me, or that a Juddy might walk into. Or, if Greg Williams went down to training at Carlton tomorrow, I'm sure they'd be hanging off every word. So the respect is almost instant, and there to be lost over the course of time by champion when they start talking, and then we realise, gee, this guy's played 350 games, but I don't really think he knows much about the game plan. So there can be the two ends to it, Dan.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, I think you're probably right. The David Nobles and the Fagans and the Nobles and Fagans and all that. Yes, they probably have to do a little bit more to prove. I do understand where you're coming from. A certain player will walk straight in the door, and like you said, it's theirs to lose. Where these guys have to earn it. You might end up in the same spot, whether it be negative or positive. But I totally see your point. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your call. Quite often, I sit back watching the coverage of games and think, Daisy Pearce gives me a wow factor when I'm listening to what Daisy's got to say about the game. And, 20 years ago, or even there's some people now that would say, AFLW players, well, there were people that said, we don't need an AFLW. But Daisy Pearce proves to so many people that female coaches are something that I can see happening in the AFL one day. I think if Daisy Pearce walked into an AFL club and coached now, she'd have instant respect because she played it, but also she's brilliant the way she is able to put it into nouns and verbs. Mark, on the Limestone Coast, you there, Mark?
Yeah, mate. G'day. How you going?
Yeah, good.
Yesterday about the Gold Coast, I just had a thought. In their away weeks, if you had have played that North Melbourne versus Giants game, but played it on the Gold Coast to promote the game, how much of a crowd do you reckon you would have got? I'll give you my answer. I reckon you would have got less than what you would have got in Hobart. Yet everyone's giving Hobart a hard time. So I don't think. By the way, great commentary on that game. So I think that you can't judge Hobart when they're given the scraps, and I say that's the only way I can put it.
Yeah.
And in
so in essence,
regards,
Mark, if the Essendon Hawthorn game was played in Hobart, they would have pulled the same crowd as they pulled in Launceston. In essence, they might have even pulled a few more because people would have gone to see it. Yep.
Easy. I lived in Hobart for 6 years. They would have packed it out. Now the Gold Coast, taking an AFL team to the Gold Coast is like taking tofu patties to a bricklayer's barbecue. They might taste all right, but it's not going to happen. The Gold Coast, the passion is in the water. You can go to the Snapper Rock surf competition and or the life saving. That's where the passion is. It's the same as Hawaii. Hawaii has 1.7 million people, and they don't have a football team. The passion's in the water, and the sooner the AFL stops throwing money at a bad situation, the better. Move the Suns to Darwin. Bring in 2 teams. Bring in a Tassie side, and bring in a third Adelaide side. Here in South Australia, there's a waiting list to become a member at the Crows. You can't get a membership. So bring in someone like Norwood.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not against Norwood coming in eventually, to be honest. I think that would be a great idea. It's a club. So you bring in a club. I'm agreeing with you 100%. The next time SA gets a team, it has to be a club with a history. And I reckon that would be fantastic. I think the next state to have 3 teams might be WA ahead of SA. I think Gold Coast on the Gold Coast long term. I just can't see the investment. I mean, we've got to take a long-term view of it. It's only 10 years in. No, I think they're going to be there forever. But I appreciate your call and made some really good points. I appreciate it. Andrew Bogut after the break. Always fantastic to have your company. Thanks to everybody that sent through a text on the text machine. I'll read out a heap of your texts, including your All-Australian nominations very shortly. So keep your All-Australian nominations coming. 0433 98 11 16 is the Tempur text number, TEMPUR. Tempur mattresses and pillows like no other. And we'll return to your calls very shortly as well on the open line brought to us by Werribee Kia. But Andrew Bogut's been good enough to join us, former Australian basketball, NBA and NBL superstar, Australian superstar, and the host of Rogue Bogues podcast as well, which you can download once we're off air with him and have a listen in your own free time. Welcome to you, Andrew. Great to have you back on the program.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
It's where do I find you and what have you been up to, may I ask? Because it's always of interest to me, whether you now you're a part owner of the Sydney Kings, obviously, but how involved you are as a non-player.
Yeah, pretty busy time for us with the Kings, to be quite honest. We in the middle of a coaching hunt and obviously a pretty big overhaul on the roster as well. So a lot of work to do, but, we can't do much in free agency until we have a coach. So that's been kind of what we've been spending our 2-3 hours a day on with conference calls and whatnot.
And you can't just jump on a plane and go overseas and chat to someone these days. How have you been finding the coach search? A little more difficult given COVID times?
Yeah, it's a good old Zoom, mate. Like everything else in the world today, it's surprised I haven't started doing radio by Zoom as well. But yeah, it's just one of those things we have to kind of navigate. And it is hard when you can't, the old touch and feel of a product or a person. The next best thing, I guess, is Zoom. But look, we're narrowing it down. It's just a bit of a challenge with even getting them in the country, to be honest with you. Once they, if we do find someone from overseas potentially, that they got to go through quarantine and all that fun stuff.
And your roster as well, are you just pouring through vision, or are there guys that you trust with their advice as to who you should get, even if the vision isn't to your liking, the advice that you've got on the player might be to your liking?
Yeah, look, it's always a hard decision. We had to make some moves on a few guys. Brad Newley was one that is getting a little bit older, and we just didn't think we had the minutes for that he deserves to play at this point in his career. So we tried to do the right thing, and even though it was a disappointing decision, and Chris Pongrass had to make that decision ultimately and let him know. And yeah, look, it's just one of those things. We had the last 2 years, we had one of the oldest rosters in the league, so we're trying to restabilize the club to be able to be successful for a 5-10 year plan rather than just a 1 year plan.
What have you made of the Ben Simmons situation, your assessment of his season and your assessment of his playoffs?
Oh, it's pretty obvious. I mean, he's had a pretty tough finish to the season. What's funny is I've been in a similar situation to him before. Towards the end of my career, wasn't the best free throw shooter, especially after the arm surgery and the wrist surgery and the finger surgery early in my career really affected my shot. So at times I got put on the line on purpose. And look, it can be a lonely place. It's something you got to try to work through. Some games I did it well, some games I didn't. But the problem for Ben is that his whole game is predicated on aggression and attacking the paint. He's not a jump shooter, so teams will almost let him do that and then just try to hack him on purpose to put him at the line. And if he's not making them, in a playoff game, as we saw, when it's that tight, it can affect, the team result.
So do you think he can improve his jump shot and his free throw shooting to the point that it won't become a problem, or do you think this is an all-career problem?
I'll put the jump shot aside and the three-point shot aside. I think that's the least of his worries. I'm not too worried. He's never going to be a knockdown three-point shooter, even if he shoots a couple of games. He's never going to be that guy. It's not his strength. It's not his game. He's a Giannis type. So in that, if he's going to shoot 10 threes or maybe make one or two of them, the elephant in the room is the free throws, because it takes away from his aggression. He's athletic, one of the most athletic and fastest guys in the league when you factor in how big and strong he is. And he's going to get to the rim and try to dunk on people. So if you can foul him early, he misses those first couple of free throws, then he's kind of not as aggressive because he doesn't want to get fouled again. So as long as he addresses that free throw thing in the off season, take it from me, it can be a mental thing more than a technique thing at times. It'll be okay. But to me, that three-point shot and the jump shot, I wouldn't worry about that at all. He needs to fix the free throw.
So even when you had free throw issues, Andrew, you seemed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, to go as hard at the basket or even harder at the basket to make sure you were only shooting one extra, not shooting two from the line.
I mean, there were periods though in games, I'm not going to lie to you, where, you get fouled a few times and you might be 2 for 6 or 3 for 8, and you're probably going to the basket with the back of your mind knowing that you're about to get hammered by someone because they're going to put you on the line. That's human nature, and you can clearly see that that's in Ben's mind when he's gone to the basket. That open dunk that he gave up, that was clearly in his mind. He didn't want to get fouled again. And, like I said, it's a lonely place. When you've got 20,000 people staring at you and teams that purposely putting you on the line, it can be pretty lonely. It's something you got to, the free throw routine and technique's going to be one thing, but there's also going to be some work needed on the mental side of things, which I did a lot of work on, especially late in my career with a sports psych, of just trying to refocus yourself and be in the right frame of mind. Kind of like putting in golf. It's the same thing. You see guys get the yips. You got to kind of retrain your mind to forget about everything else that's happened and just focus on those next two free throws.
Have you spoken to Ben? Will you speak to Ben?
No, I haven't. I don't really have a relationship with Ben. I mean, we chatted a few times early in his career, pre-NBA days, but I think there's not many guys in Australia that are close to Ben. He's more on that, I think LeBron's a big mentor of his, and Clutch, the agency, so that's kind of his crew that he rolls with, and that's not a knock by any means. It's just, it is what it is.
So do you think he'll change teams? Do you think he might could he end up at the Lakers? It would be extraordinary if he did, but could he go somewhere else?
Oh, he's making a lot of money, so it's a pretty hard contract to just move on the fly. Dwayne, I think he's, they'll probably will look. I think the Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons experiment's over. I think I mentioned this on the podcast, not to plug my podcast, but we mentioned that Joel Embiid's not an open floor, high tempo type player. Ben Simmons is. They're kind of polar opposites. Embiid's very good on the post, that slower tempo, whereas Ben's complete opposite. So I think that experiment has done its dash, and I reckon they're going to, they will try to move Ben, I think. But there's a big contract in play, and it'll be a matter of what they can get back and who's willing to take in that big contract. But look, he's not far away from fixing that free throw thing, and he still is. People still forget he is an all-league defender and one of the best in the open floor. But when the playoffs come around and the game slows down and it's a holding, grabbing type game, it can really rear its ugly head like it did in that Atlanta series.
Will you have any off-court role in our push for a medal in Tokyo?
No, I had an offer to take up an assistant coaching role. Unfortunately, knocked that back. I just, with everything going on in the world, it was something I didn't want to rush into and put my hand up post-retirement. And I'm not a fan of a lot of these, restrictions going on in the world, and just didn't want to put myself in a position where I could potentially get stuck in Japan away from my kids longer than anticipated, and that could potentially happen. We saw it with the cricketers in India, and not something I was willing to do at this point.
Would you advise Ben to play for the Boomers at the Olympic Games if he asked your advice?
Yeah, I'd advise anyone to play for the Boomers if they had the opportunity, but I think that ship sailed, mate. I don't think he's going to play this Olympics, and reports from the States are saying the same, that there's already been a leak to some prominent journalists, which if I was a betting man, I would say has come from his agency group or his circle. And look, you can't fault him too much. He's got some demons that he needs to fix, but the question remains, when is he going to suit up? He's the best player Australia has ever produced. He's our superstar, and it's just a shame we can't get him to put his country's colours on.
So are you disappointed at all, or do you think fans, the Australian basketball fans, should be disappointed that, this is our big medal chance. We haven't won a men's medal at the Olympic Games. We could have even been a chance to win gold had Ben Simmons had suited up. That wasn't a beyond, the realms of possibility. Are you disappointed?
Well, I think everyone's disappointed. He's the best player in the world, best player in the world from Australia. The best Australian-born NBA player right now in the league. So I obviously don't count Kyrie for those that want to be specific, because he was 6 months old when he left Australia. But Ben would be an integral part of our national team. So it is disappointing. But everyone kind of sometimes doesn't play for their national team for different reasons, and it's clear as day why he's not going to play, because there's some mental demons and demons that he needs to figure out in the off season, which you can't fault too much. But 2019 was an opportunity, 2016 was an opportunity, so there's only going to be so many Olympics left that he can get to, and I just hope we can get him the green and gold eventually.
You reckon Joe Ingles, Paddy Mills and co will be disappointed that he's not joining them, who are so passionate to wear the green and gold and can't wait to get there?
Yeah, of course. I think from the passion point of view and just the competitiveness, we think we're a better team with Ben Simmons in the lineup. There's no doubt about it. Anyone can see that. And I think there'll be some disappointment from those fellas knowing that we don't have our best roster out there. But at the same time, one thing I will say about that group is, it's a resilient group. Even when I was a part of it, and it was the next man up mentality, and we still have a lot of weapons in that team. It's just a matter of buying into that mentality of Boomers basketball, the grit and grind type stuff, and helping each other out and putting the country first. And I think those guys will do that. Just a matter of if we can get a lucky bounce or two, you're in a medal game.
And do you see that when you look back on your own career after all the stuff you've done? You won NBA championships, so you've done it all. What part of you looks back and says, gee, I'm really proud of what I did for Australia when I had my chance to do it?
Oh, look, I'm proud of representing my country. The thing that I'm still pissed off to this day that we didn't get a medal at the World Cup in 19 and finished fourth there, and some dubious calls at the end of that one. And then in 2016 at Rio, we finished fourth again. So we were an inch away from getting at least a bronze. So that was disappointing. And to be honest, look, I've missed a few campaigns due to injury where I had to kind of rehab a surgery or rest the body. But most times when I had an opportunity to come home and play, I'd love doing it just because it's just different. Professional basketball is one thing, but for the most part, your national team is kind of leave your bullshit at the door and kind of what are you doing for the greater good of the team for the 2 months, 3 months that you're involved. So it seemed a little bit like kind of junior basketball and grassroots basketball in a way. But even that's starting to change now, to be honest with you. National teams now are starting to, have superstars making demands. I just hope, our national team never gets to that point.
So do you think that it's helped make you who you are, being part of that Aussie old school team group of people trying to get the one goal as part of your overall career?
Oh, no doubt. I think it brings you back down to earth too, no matter how high you are. And some guys that are high and even some guys that are low that had a bad year for their club team. Once you come into that national team program, I think it's, like I said, it's a common goal. Stats aren't as vital. You're not getting paid upon a performance that you had with your national team generally, So most people align the same way. And yeah, look, I wouldn't be in the NBA, number one, without Australia, without the development of the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport. My first Olympics was in 2004 in Athens, so shows you how old I am. But without all that, I definitely wouldn't have had the journey that I was lucky enough to go through.
What's next for Andrew Bogut? Before I'll let you go, what have you got? You're a part owner now. Are you a chance to grab a little piece of the Perth Wildcats? Are you sneakily looking at them as well or not?
That's your boss, mate. Your boss bought them. I don't know if you saw that, but your boss. And get this, Hutchie, good old Hutchie. People don't think he's that smart of a fella, but he's getting a championship ring whether United win it or Perth. It's amazing. It's a great chess move by Hutchie. He's got ownership in both teams. It's amazing.
I'm not sure he has bought in yet, but I might have to give him a ring and find out.
He's about to buy in. No, it's been reported. It's been reported. He's about to buy the Wildcats or his group, but still has shares in United. So, like I said, the genius of Hutchie, he gets a ring no matter what.
Who wins the NBA from here, Andrew?
Oh, mate, flip a coin. We do predictions on the podcast, and mine have been as far from right as you can get. It's just been one of those seasons, much like the footy last year, I guess. I mean, some things have just come out of left field, and Phoenix continues to amaze me with the way that they just keep progressing. I had them out in the first round against the Lakers, and now they're in the conference finals, up 1-0. You know, for me, I hope Milwaukee win it. I spent 7, 8 years in Milwaukee, a big part of growing from a boy into a man, part of my life, so it has a kind of sentimental place in my heart. I would love to see the city of Milwaukee win an NBA championship, and I think they have a very good chance of beating Atlanta and a very good chance of winning a final series.
Andrew, great to have a chat to you. If anybody wants to download the Rogue Bogues podcast, it's there on your podcast store, so drop down and download that and have a listen in your own free time. Always great to be able to pick your brain, Andrew. I really appreciate you sparing a few minutes of your day. Thanks, and we'll talk soon.
Easy, no worries. Cheers.
Andrew Bogut, former Australian superstar, and as I mentioned, the host of Rogue Bogues podcast. We'll take a break. By the way, Dream Street are giving you the chance to win dream seats to your favourite sporting events. You can head to iCanWin.com.au if you want to find out more. And if you're Tyler out there, Beaumont has over 110 stores with the best range of RLA glues, grouts and waterproofing, and you can win 25 grand's worth if you jump onto iCanWin.com.au. Back to your calls after a little break. Always great to have your company. Let's head straight back to your calls and your texts. So jump on the open line. Thanks to Werribee Kia, that number 1300 736 736. Anything you'd like to discuss or what we just discussed with Andrew Bogut. Your thoughts on that, 1300 736 736. An opportunity to take a few of your calls. Sam Edmund, hopefully to join us later this hour to give us an update on what might be the crowd situation for Victorian sports events across the weekend, including, obviously, the A-League Grand Final. But up until, Sam, your calls, 1300 736 736. And Werribee Kia are open for business, by the way, if you want to drop down and say hello to the team, David and Janan and Aid and Jim. Huge new and used car stock down there, and make sure you tell them we sent you. A few of your texts that have come through on the Temper text machine as well, 0433 98 11 16, before we head back to your calls. Temper, T-E-M-P-U-R, mattresses and pillows like no other. One here from Joe on the text. After a caller earlier on said that Sam Mitchell has knocked back a request to be interviewed by the Collingwood Football Club for the coaching job. One here from J-Dog. Smart decision by Sam Mitchell. Only coached his own team for 6 games at Box Hill. Thanks for that one. And a couple of others saying that it's good for Collingwood that they're not going to try and grab a guy like Sam Mitchell with training wheels. And boy, has the word training wheels become a part of the football vernacular when it comes to coaching jobs. One here on the text, basketball will be 20% crowds because it's indoors. Marvel will have its roof open to allow more crowds. And again, no confirmation on what the crowds might be, even though we presume that it could be 100%, 50%, not 100%. One from Gavin, I love Andrew Bogut, just says how it is, no bulldust or dancing around questions. Get him on more often if you can, please, Dwayne. He's been great to this show over time, and it is fun to get him on. I really enjoy having him on, so we will see if we can sneak him on a more regular basis and give his podcast a plug on the way through. Collingwood supporters all around the country can breathe a big sigh of relief. Mitchell, definitely not our man. Thanks for that. And your All-Australian selections as well that have come through. And sent through a few more, 0433 98 11 16 on the text, or if you want to give us a call, 1300 736 736. Took Miller has to be in. Toby from Geelong. Darcy Parish, thanks for that, Jamie. Sean Darcy ahead of Tom Hickey on the bench as the second ruck behind Gawn. Yeah, I reckon that at the moment it's looking like Gawn and Nick Nat Nui, but Tom Hickey, I think, would be ahead of Sean Darcy on that list. Nick Hind, All-Australian halfback. Thanks for that. Harry Mackay has kicked the most goals, but has virtually 0 goal assists. Players like Hawkins and Rewalt have just as many goal assists as goals. And it will be interesting to see if the All-Australian selectors take those kind of things, those numbers, into account as a factor, or whether they just go with the old school. Because it has been the case, I think, 9 out of the 10 times you see your All-Australian team named, the full forward is the guy that has won the Coleman. And if not full forward, he's sitting in the forward pocket. So you think that Harry Mackay is ahead of the list for that spot. Waller is an All-Australian lock. So, yeah, another vote for Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody. I'd take Buddy over Mackay in the All-Australian team. So a few fans of Buddy out there. Dylan Grimes and Dusty should be on the All-Australian team from Tigerland. Hammer from Rowville. CJ, I think Chanku Jiath has to be a contender for the All-Australian team. If he puts in a big last half of the year, I'd genuinely have him in there. Now, Nick Hind might be ahead of him on that list, but right now he's putting together a pretty good resume, is Chanku Jiath, and it's a delight to watch him play, as it is with Nick Hind. Hey, get Nick Hind in there, Dwayne. That's from Mark. Tom Stewart is a lock as well. Joel Selwood, not out of the question, according to the text machine as well. So quite a few coming through. Thanks for those that sent a text through. Lou in Bundoora, welcome to you, Lou.
Dwayne, how you going, mate? I'm just taking two things about the Bogut, the conversation I had with Andrew Bogut. Now, he said two things that quite interested me. The first one was he doesn't really have a relationship with the other Aussie teammates, right? It doesn't sound like it because he pulls more to the American side, right? Which is fair enough.
He what? Sorry, what? He what? I missed that bit. What was that? Sorry, Lou.
Yeah, he pulls more to the American side. Like, you know, he spends more of his time there. You know, he doesn't really have a relationship with the Aussie NBA blokes. And also, do you really think Andrew Bogut said, right, he's our best ever produced basketballer? Dwayne, he can't shoot. How's he the best ever? All right, athletically, he's a freak, like 6'10", the way he moves, unbelievable.
Yep.
But he can't shoot, Dwayne. He can't be the best basketballer we've produced.
Yeah, Lou, just on that, and obviously I don't know basketball as well as I know football, so let me just draw the football analogy, even though people are going to hate it. But someone who is the greatest defender of all time, when it comes to the all-time great defenders, so, you know, you think about, you know, Jeff Southby, Steve Silvani, Matthew Scarlett, all the greatest defenders we've ever had. When you talk about the greatest AFL players of all time, there is still the guys who were attacking geniuses ahead of them on the list. So it's hard to think of that and not draw that analogy with Ben Simmons, who might be the second best defensive player in the NBA right now. But at the same time, if you can't score, you can't score, Lou. So, yeah, that's the issue. Are our scorers that have played for Australia, are the scorers that have been boomers and have produced for the Boomers and given their heart and soul for the Boomers going to be ahead of Ben Simmons? And are the scorers that didn't just give their heart and soul for the Boomers but went over to the NBA and did great things and won championships like Andrew Bogut always going to be ahead of Ben Simmons, Lou?
Oh, that's what I was thinking, Dwayne. Because Andrew Bogut's won a ring. So until the end of his career, we can't really say he's the best player that Australia's produced because, you know, it's on paper, at the moment, he's not.
Yeah, and Luke Longley's got 3 rings as well to go with it. So Luke Longley, you know, had a huge impact on the Chicago Bulls in one of the greatest eras of all time, one of the greatest basketball teams of all time. So he's got to be up there as well. But, you know, let's not forget some of the greatest female players as well have to be in that equation. Warren in SA, welcome to you, Warren.
Yeah,